Hello and welcome to Tommy Talks TV. I have one singular goal with this show, and that is to help you make smarter decisions so that you can have better relationships. I'd like to start again, as usual, by saying a very big thank you. Thank you for all your likes and your shares and your comments on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. I really, really appreciate you because you're helping us spread the message further, faster. So thank you very much indeed. Now, today I'm going to be taking another one of your questions, and it goes like this. Greetings from Serbia. I have a concern and I would like to ask your advice. I started a non Christian relationship with a man. At a point, we both started to learn more about Christianity. We both were open to a change in that direction. Suddenly, I reached a spot where I decided I wanted to put our intimacy on hold till marriage. He is against that because he believes that I'm the only woman he's going to be with and he's going to marry me. I see that it is hard for him to understand so much so fast. Should I give our relationship more time to develop in God's way? I'm his first relationship and he's so devoted to me. This is our main struggle. We've been together for 2 years. It's hard for me to give up on someone that I've already committed to completely. Thank you for your answer, Maria. Well, thank you for this excellent question, Maria. I can just imagine how challenging it must be for you trying to navigate through these differences. And let me start by saying that it is absolutely fantastic that you have discovered a relationship with God before getting married, because it is usually more difficult if both parties are non Christians before marriage, and then one of them discovers a relationship with God after marriage, and this spouse is simply not interested, because that can lead to a huge clash in values over time, and it takes the wisdom of God to navigate through such a tricky situation and to keep the marriage intact and on track. So you see, the reality is that as you pursue a relationship with God, your perspective of life and your values will change. That's the way it is. And this is what you're experiencing in your relationship, because as you're learning more of God, it's changing your perspective of life and how you view things. It's a good thing that you're both interested in exploring your faith. However, one thing that is important for you to remember is that your devotion should be to God first before each other. And I cannot overemphasize this point. You see, the man who will love you the way that you deserve to be loved is a man who loves God above everyone and everything else. So, in the same way, in order for you to love a man the way that God designed for you to love him, you must love God above all else first. So, your love for your spouse should flow out of your love for Christ. This is how God designed marriage to work. So, your goal in your relationship should be to please God first, not each other. And, as much as you are correct in your desire, to put aside intimacy in your relationship, it's something that you've got to work through that process, because you're absolutely right. This is what the scripture commands. The scripture is clear that sexual intimacy should be reserved for the context of marriage. If you look in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, from verses 1 to verse 3, I read it from the Message translation of the Bible. I like it because it simplifies things. It says, "Now, getting down to the question you asked me in your letter to me," this was the Apostle Paul writing to the Corinthian church. He says, "First, is it a good thing to have sexual relations? Certainly, but only within a certain context." And that's really what the key is. Only within a certain context. It's good for a man to have a wife and for a woman to have a husband. Sexual drives are strong, but marriage is strong enough to contain them and provide for a balanced and fulfilling sexual life in a world of sexual disorder. So, it's clear from scripture that God designed sex strictly for the context of marriage, but He didn't do it to hurt us. He did it to protect us from the consequences of sexual disorder. When we keep sex in the context that God designed for it to be in, then that's when we're able to enjoy the kind of balanced and fulfilling sexual life that God has planned for us to have. He gives us boundaries for sex in order to maintain its purity and to maintain its sanctity, so that we take it as seriously as He takes it, because what it's meant to be is a holy seal of lifetime commitment to each other. And that's why the scripture commands that we reserve sex until we've actually made that commitment. And then it's a seal. Sex is a seal that constantly reminds us of that commitment. So this may be hard for the man in your life to accept, but the fact that you plan to get married one day doesn't make sex before marriage any less of a sin. That's the thing. So, it's never God's intention for a couple to be sexually intimate before marriage. And sometimes we do make those excuses and say, well, we're going to be together anyway, we're going to be married anyway. That does not change the fact that, God has made a command, and until you cross that threshold of unmarried to married, the scripture does not expect, or God does not expect that, you engage in sexual relations. God will forgive all that has happened in your past before you came to know him. That's not an issue for him, as once you ask for forgiveness. But then he expects you to live by his values now that you have committed your life to him. So I can understand, that it's difficult for you to contemplate not being with this man who has been so devoted to you. If he's equally committed to his relationship to God, then there is a possibility of making the relationship between you work. However, it's very important to note, and this is what I always advise people in this kind of situation. It is best to give each other some space in situations where you are not equally committed to God. And I say this for two reasons. First of all, because you have already developed habits of intimacy in your relationship, which will be very, very difficult to break, even if you're both committed. And, talk less of if you're not committed to it. So, if you're not both committed to breaking those habits, then it will be extremely difficult. And the second thing is this: it will be meaningless, for the man in your life to seek God just because he wants you in his life. That's absolutely meaningless, because if his relationship with God is based on him wanting you in his life, then that means he's not actually pursuing after God, he's pursuing after you, and his relationship with God may not last after marriage. So that's one thing you need to remember. So he must want God for himself because he recognizes that he needs God, not because he wants you in his life. So you've got to remember this: a godly relationship will draw you closer to God. It won't drive a wedge between you and God. So my advice to you is that you put your relationship with God first. And if that means that you have to end this relationship, then, it will hurt, but your heart will heal. That's the thing. Your heart will heal. It will be better for you to end the relationship and hurt for a while than for you to end up in a lifetime of regret because you did not follow through with your convictions. So, if that's a decision that you have to make, then I would say to you, make it in faith, knowing that God has your best interest at heart, and trust God that he will send someone else your way who will encourage you in your walk with God. Well, I hope this has helped you. If this has helped you, then please leave me a message on Facebook, on Instagram, or on YouTube, or wherever it is you're watching. And if you've got a question you would like me to answer, then head on over to tommytalks.com/ask, and I'll answer your question next time. See you next time. Bye-bye.